Hey, what's up, everybody? Sitting here doing some bits and pieces and had a timer set, and I don't know what happened, but the timer still showed 7 minutes, but I thought it seemed off, and I looked at the clock, realized it was after 4. So thanks for waiting, and wanted to start it out with a special shout out to Transport to Terror for the new membership. That's awesome. Awesome. Hopefully you guys are doing good. Hopefully you're all doing good. So it's been a usual busy weekend for me. Doing a T-shirt today for a movie that I like, not a band, but Hobo with a Shotgun. If you've never seen that, it's pretty brutal. But Rutger Hauer, classic. R.I.P. to him. He was a great actor, but he played the hobo. And if you're a fan of the Trailer Park Boys, Ricky, the actor that plays Ricky, he is in it as well, but for a very brief scene at the beginning. But it's worth watching even just for that if you're a fan of the Trailer Park Boys. So, but I'm going to be using my phone to be able to see the comments. You guys that have been through my lives here recently know that I've been dealing with with a bad case of cataracts from some hyperbaric chamber treatment that I did for my wounds. And I got surgery coming up June 2nd. It'll be the first one. And so that'll make this a lot better. For some reason, it's been better these last few days, but here today it's acting up again on me. And in the bright light, it makes it really tough to see. But I need the light to be able to see things like around me. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Out in the studio, I have answers for this stuff. I've got all kinds of special lighting set up to be able to see really well and not have it show up on the video. But I'm not set up for that in here, and I don't really want to go through all the hoops and all that jumping through to be able to do the stuff in here like I do out there. But we are making plans. It's going to be a several stage process to get me back out in the studio, which is in a 2-car garage, but it's not attached. So I have to be able to get to it, which is the first step, and then to be able to move some things around inside, which were oddly in the works before I got sick last May. I was talking about clearing out this area outside the studio where usually we just kind of hang out and make it more conducive to hanging out. Like put a little sofa in there and a coffee table, a couple chairs. This way, when we have guests in, which we do quite often, we've got somewhere for them to hang out and wait, and then for us all to sit down and chill. So that should be okay. Here, I got a question right out of the box. And I do appreciate all the nice things you guys say. I see them, believe me, I do. And it's very nice. So I appreciate that. And it makes it worth, getting up every day and doing this because, I'm retired now. I could be like sitting there reading a book, but of course I can't with cataracts, but I'd do audio books if I had to be able to see, or to be able to continue to read. But I do like, seeing the comments and knowing that, making some kind of difference in people's days, give them something fun to look at the end of the day, seeing what this goofball has to say. This guy talking about 666. And it's still funny. I still get the negative comments about that. It's like, it's just a goof. I'm not like some devil worshiper. If you want to worship the devil, I really don't care. I don't care what you worship or not worship, but people get all hung up on it. It's just a goof. It's not real. All right. So let's see here. First comment out of the box or question. This is Jacob Monster 999. I've seen you in the comments and chats before, Jacob, so thank you. One thing about the Gonzalez said that Steve Gonzalez said that really puzzles me that Kaylee's phone never had been returned to them. And is it possible that she caught BK or other perps on her house that night? I mean, it's certainly possible. We know that Kaylee was one of us, right? A true crime nut, just like all of us here. So if she was super into true crime, I think there's certainly possible she had knowledge of something. I know I did a video not that long ago about this kind of thing, Jacob, and talking about that the rumor was that Ethan had some information, and who knows? I pointed out in my video that maybe he had gone to Kaylee because he knew that Kaylee was into true crime. And if Murder Metal Mayhem had been a channel before the crimes, I bet she would have been throwing up some horns in the chat here with us. She would be one of us here because I've got people from Moscow that come here and sit in. So I don't see any reason why she wouldn't have. But if things were different, right? But yeah, I mean, it's some people think that maybe she did have some knowledge of one of these other incidents that had happened, like the Hudson Lindau case. I did a video about him recently, and I was really surprised it got as many views as it did, as quickly as it did. People were really into that one, and I was surprised because I don't think it got nearly the interest when I did it the first time a year ago. But I've been revisiting some of these topics I've covered already just to see if there's anything new. And then, as I've mentioned before, we got people coming into the community every day, dozens of them every day. And so, we've got people that could conceivably be brand new to the case. My mom would be a good example of that. My mom might be out there in the chat. So if you're out there, Mom, what's up? But my mom loves watching these videos, I think, because we miss each other, having gone through all this stuff here lately. I talk to her almost just about every day, but we're geographically very far away from each other. But she watches these videos and she doesn't know much about this crime at all, So I was telling her, to go ahead and get educated on the subject. And what I told her is, instead of watching my videos, which she could have done, but mine are not in a specific order. And I told her that Lucky from Unfiltered Lucky had done some recent videos past few months that have been kind of going back to the beginning and going through it all, And Lucky's just a great channel and a great guy. And I told her to go to Lucky's channel and subscribe and then watch some of his videos. So I have no problem, sending people to Lucky because Lucky's a cool dude. And he's going to be doing a live tonight with AR Hayes. So you want to go to, I'm not sure if it's going to be broadcast on Lucky's channel or not, probably because he's doing that now, but for sure AR Hayes. So tonight, I don't know what time, you may want to go to his channel and see. And if he's in the comments, maybe AR will tell us that. But I think it's perfectly possible that Kaylee could have been involved in something, whether she heard about something or had picked up on something from her own investigative work. I mean, we know that she had told somebody that she'd been followed. She noticed that people had been following her. And, one of my theories I've come out with from the beginning almost is my lambs to the slaughter theory. Oh, no, not with this. Hey guys, I'm really sorry about that. Having a technical issue here with my camera. It's been doing fine here lately, and about a week or so ago, it started acting up. So I'm going to need to. I've got an external camera. I'm going to try out of the studio and see if I can get that to work better. Because when I'm by myself and not with like AR and Alive, it sucks because I have to get out of this program and come back in to be able to get it to work again. So something's wrong, but no money in the budget for a tech person, but we'll figure it out. So that was a good question from Jacob right out of the box. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Bonnie says she loves the streams. Appreciate that, Bonnie. Okay, got one here from Fox Rooter. How can a police officer confirm a homicide within seconds of arriving on the scene of an unconscious person, but EMTs not allowed in? Yeah, I mean that's a good question. You know, lots of people were asking about that. What messes me up in this case is, I guess, for lack of a better term, because I hate math, the order of operations. So, as I understand it, you know, like when a 911 call is placed, officers arrive on the scene. They determine, yeah, we've got an obvious homicide here. You know, they're calling in the coroner. Everybody's in motion here, and everything's kind of happening right away. And I realize that the coroner might have to wait, depending on the scene, you know, to do certain things. But the way they did it here seems so cloak and dagger, which is no surprise with the way they are about everything in this case. You know, they act like you know, it's a big secret. Everything's a big secret here, and that's what's frustrating. Is they act like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, nobody can know what the other's doing, kind of thing. You know, it's kind of like H.H. Holmes when he built his murder castle up there in Chicago. Is, you know, nobody could see what the others were doing, so his secrets would be safe. That sort of thing. So if you're a true crime fan and you don't know who H.H. Holmes is, you should go ahead and smack yourself, because you should know that. And if you don't know who H.H. Holmes is, go Google that. It's some good stuff. There's a video here on YouTube that's probably the definitive one on Holmes by a friend of mine, John Borowski. So John Borowski's a filmmaker, and he did one on Holmes. He did one on Fish, which is another brutal one. But anyway, if you're into true crime, even the older cases should intrigue you as well as these current ones, right? Because it's amazing how many things are the same, which I find patterns in a lot of these cases that we talk about are very similar to other ones that we've gone over. You know, like people want to draw the analogy between Brian Koberger or whoever did the crimes there at 1122 and Bundy. And I don't know about that. I mean, there are always going to be some similarities between these guys, but I think they're very, very different. I don't see them as being the same. But ironically, Bundy also operated partially up in that area as well of the country. So yeah, I don't know what they were doing here. It seems like they were playing games from the start. It seems like from the get-go, they were playing games. You know, why there would be no sirens on the 911 tape. So if you think about a typical crime starting, you know, they call 911, you're hearing sirens, you know, there's all sorts of activity. We don't hear any of that. We don't hear any of that on this one. Why? Well, why don't we? Something's different about this case. There's nothing about this case that's like any other crime I've ever looked at. I keep drawing analogies to the Alex Murdaugh trial because I was super into that case. Very interesting case. Not nearly as complicated as this one, but very interesting. And I was watching the trial and, was really sucked into it. And that's why I didn't get into the Idaho 4 right away, because I was into the Alex Murdaugh trial. And then after the Alex Murdaugh trial, I started getting into Idaho 4. But there's a lot of similarities about these cases, a lot of things that are different. And the big difference is how they were handled. Like right from the beginning, we got the 911 tape. Could hear Alex on the phone, call 911. We saw 3 police interviews. Can you imagine how cool that would be to actually be able to watch these interviews they did with Dylan? I mean, just that one alone, Dylan and Bethany, would be worth its weight in gold to be able to see those interviews fresh right off after it happened. And maybe we're way off on what we think about Dylan and Bethany. I don't think so. But all we know is what we're told, right? Maybe watching these videos would put us in a different light, put this whole thing in a different light. I think it's very possible that, allowing the public to view these interviews would maybe change their perspective. So if that's the case, then what are they afraid of us changing our perspective to? Finding them more guilty, maybe, which very well is possible. Finding them less guilty and someone else being guilty that they don't want us to think about, who knows? A lot of people have questioned the police. I just did a video yesterday about the police and their what I think is a botched investigation. So, you've got a lot of people to point fingers to. So you wonder if they're allowing the public to be hateful and side-eye of Dylan and Bethany, maybe that's the intended target they want us to, be concentrating on instead of the other thing, like a magician in their sleight of hand. Are they letting us hate on Dylan and Bethany, knowing that nothing's going to happen to them, while they're playing some shenanigans over here? I know when I did a video or a live last year with Michael Addario. Michael Addario's the filmmaker who did the Idaho 4 series, Blow Up. Very good series on his channel. Speaking of that, go check that out. Michael Addario Photography, the Blow Up Idaho 4 series. Michael is just past his 1,000 subscribers, which is awesome, but he needs to increase his watch hours to get his channel monetized. So why don't we help him out and go to Michael Addario, Addario Photography, and subscribe and watch that Blow Up series. There's several parts to it, but they're really good. And one of those parts is what he and I did a video on about parallel construction. 2 different things going on at the same time. The one they want you to see and the other one they don't. So while we're sitting here chasing every rabbit down every hole, they could have something else completely different going on and we're not paying any attention to it. And that's very possible here. Very, very possible. But really, really great questions and comments, guys. Right out of the gate here. You guys are awesome. Here's Shell 2990 from the UK. So what's up, Shell? Steve says so many weird things. It bothers me that he sticks up for Dylan and Bethany all the time and that the 911 is so iffy. I agree. Yeah, I mean, I just watched something about Steve G and Dylan and Bethany at the memorial service they had for the 4 victims. Bethany wouldn't even talk to him. I guess she just took off and left the event to avoid him. And then Dylan just pulled the nonsense she pulled with the cops, which is I was drunk and I didn't know anything. I was asleep. That's how it started, I think. Personally, I think that was her plan, was to go into the police and say I was so drunk and so high and so whatever that I just fell asleep, passed out, and don't know a damn thing. That's what I bet she started with. And then I think the police needed that eyewitness. I don't know what kind of eyewitness that is, but an eyewitness to say they saw somebody in the hallway, you know. But to me, the key to the defense is to prove that this happened earlier. And then I think the whole thing falls apart. If they can prove that this happened earlier, or that Koberger wasn't anywhere near that house at the time that they claim it happened, then I think the case is done, because they are putting all their eggs in the basket of this stupid white Elantra. And I'll tell you what, I have a hard time watching content about the white Elantra, because I think that's the classic having us chase around the shiny object while they play games in somewhere else. But the white Elantra is the most ridiculous thing ever, because we never see it. We never see it on any kind of video. We only see it from the side, so we don't know if it's his car or not. And not to mention, it'd be different if the guy drove like a Rolls Royce or something definitively different than the rest of the cars around there. But you had to pick the most common car and the most common color of car in the area, a white Elantra. I mean, give me a break. What was there, like 10,000 of them there at the university, or some ridiculous amount of them? I mean, you look at any of the videos. I mean, Michael Adario's videos show all these different Elantras, multiple Elantras. Jack Decor, his dad owned one that Jack drove. Eric Goer's mom had a silver one, but looks very similar to white in the dark, in the night. So there's another one for you. Enan Harsh drove one, but his was an older one. I mean, there were all kinds of these things. A couple of the sorority girls had Elantras. Supposedly, Demetrius's brother had an Elantra. And somebody had sent me a video or a screenshot of Google Earth. They emailed it to me, that showed a house that supposedly Demetrius had lived at that time. And in the driveway is a white Elantra. In the driveway at his house is a white Elantra. So it could have been him, or his brother had one. And then there's the one that got wrecked in Oregon, where was that? Eugene, Oregon. There was that white Elantra several days after the crime, abandoned on the side of the road with some damage to it, some body damage. And they traced it. I remember it was traced to a woman in Colorado. That's odd. What, unless somebody drove her car, like how would her car end up in Oregon? And she's from Colorado, but supposedly she bought the car from Dan Estee, who's the owner of, at the time, one of the two owners of the house on King Road. So that's an odd coincidence. A car that he owned and sold to this woman ends up wrecked in Eugene, Oregon, several days after the crimes happened. Personally, I think the car that wrecked in Oregon is the one that they show on the camera at the mobile gas station on the edge of town. There's that one that store clerk caught, like on a cell phone picture off of a video camera, so the quality's really crappy. But you can see it looks like a white sedan. It's hard to really pick it out. I don't know cars like some people do, but nonetheless, I think that's the car that ended up in Oregon. And that car was at 345, hightailing it out of town. And that jives with my timeline, which is I think the crimes happened just before, started at around 2:15 and ended about an hour later ish. And that would have been just enough time for somebody to get cleaned up, maybe hit a drive-through as they're leaving town, and taken off away from the area, get some distance there. I think that's one of the reasons of the delay in time of calling 911, is they wanted to get the people that did this, give them enough time to get far away so they weren't around when police started looking for who did this. That's what I think. So let's see here. What else we got? Yeah, you guys had so many good questions here. I figure let's just roll with what you guys are asking. I don't want to bore you, and I want to get you guys as involved as possible. Oh, Don, I saw your message here about the Yankees losing. I did see that, but thank you for your designated responsibility of letting me know when the games are going on while we're doing a live. So thank you. So very good. All right, I'm going to. Oh, there's my mom. I see my mom there in the chat. I'm a little behind where you guys are. But all right, well, let me go through some things here before I forget, because I get started on these lives and I forget some things I wanted to point out. Happy Star Wars Day to anybody that's super into that stuff. Of course, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. My wife is super into the Star Wars thing. We've been watching Star Wars all day. The Family Guy, Star Wars, and all kinds of different things too. So we're having some fun with it. But yeah, I did not do this on purpose. It just kind of worked out that way that I'm doing this on the 4th. But with my lives, I don't put up with any BS. So if somebody's in the chat being difficult, we'll just put them in a timeout and be done with it. So just not doing it. Just don't play that game with people. It's silly. We're here to have some fun, and I don't want to take away from anybody's fun by somebody being difficult. Also wanted to say, I don't say it enough, special thanks to my beautiful wife, Jenny, for all the support. I mean, you guys, I would be in a VA nursing home right now if it were not for her. I cannot fully take care of myself. So she is amazing. And she does so much for me and works full time. She's just awesome. But she's behind the scenes helping me, grabbing me a coffee before I start and making sure I can, get everything I need to get, especially now with this situation. So I want to say thank you to her. Also, don't miss, I'm going to be doing a special live this Thursday night. I don't know the date of that offhand, but this Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, with AR Hayes. AR is doing good. He's got his first eye surgery tomorrow, so be thinking about AR tomorrow and some positive vibes his way. And it's just cataract surgery, so it's just like what I'm going to be dealing with. That's the first part of his surgeries. He's got a series of them that they're doing on his eyes, but the first one is cataract, so he should be good to go for Thursday. And it'll also be interesting to see how his surgery goes, because I'll be doing the exact same thing a month later. So mine will be in June, a month away. So it's getting here soon. Now I'm going to do contest tonight or today, I wanted to do a special contest. I haven't done one of these for a while. And the last time I did it, it went really well because the person that won the video got to be on a live with me or a recorded video with me. We can kind of see how it goes, but it'll be Idaho 4, but you pick the topic on Idaho 4. So we'll talk about the Banfield. We'll talk about Linda Lane. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll do it. And depending on the topic, will depend on what kind of video it is. But first things first, if you're 18 and older and you want to be in the contest, that'll be cool. As long as you're cool with being on video with me, you won't be paid or anything, but give you all the information you need. You don't need anything special. You don't need a microphone. You can do it right from your phone. It's very easy to do with a link that I give you. It's kind of like being in a Zoom meeting, basically, StreamYard. And you don't need anything special. It's just you and your phone or you at a computer. If you're using a computer, then you're going to need to, figure out some things on the computer, but for video and audio, but it shouldn't be a big deal at all. So, and maybe you'll decide to start your own channel with that. You may be really into it and love being on video and think, wow, why don't I try to do this myself? So I think that would be great. But keep watching for details at the end. We'll do the contest question, and you have to be watching it live in order to get in order to enter. So you can't do it on the replay because I want to have a winner by the end of the live. So I don't want to do it, like where it's later on. So unfortunately, you guys watching on the replay, the contest will already be over when you're watching it. So I try to make it so that the people on the replay can watch it just like us. But this is going to be one where they really would have to be watching it live. Also, just past 13,000 subscribers. So thank you very much. That's awesome. We're rising quickly. If you're not a subscriber, please do that. If you want to, get the notifications and all that stuff when I'm doing things, like the video, please do that. It only takes a moment. It's amazing how many people watch the videos that don't do that. I'm always amazed. It's like 10% of the people that watch a video hit like, which is not really that much, especially as much as we try to remind you. I'm sure every channel you watch says that. And there's a reason why they say that, because when the video gets a lot of watches and likes and comments, YouTube sees, oh, wow, this is a video people like, and they'll keep pushing it further out to more people. If there's very little activity, then they don't really think that it's very interesting and that people aren't interested in watching it. And then it kind of dies on the vine. So it does make a huge difference. It doesn't cost anything to do that either. To like, to subscribe. If you want to be a member, now that's a little different, and that differs from channel to channel. I only have the one tier at $1.99 a month, and that's the Horns High Club. And after this video today, I'll be doing a members only live with the Horns High Club after we're done. And in there, we talk about whatever, we talk about movies, we talk about whatever the group wants to talk about. I'll talk about it with them. So that's the fun about doing those. I'll do my best to respond to your questions and your comments with my phone. As I mentioned, it's easier for me to do it that way. So that's what I'm using to be able to see your questions. So I'm not able to put a lot of them up on the screen because I have to be able to see it on the computer to do that. And the computer text doesn't allow me to make it any bigger, and it's really small. And with my cataracts, I can't see it. So that's why I have to do it this way. I always have people ask me about ways to donate or tip or whatever you want to call it. I got a banner I'll put up on the screen at some point where you can do that, whether you want to do it by PayPal, Cash App, or just a super chat. YouTube gets 30% of the super chats, but it's still very much appreciated if you want to become a member. Anything you want to do to support Murder Metal Mayhem, I sure appreciate it. I also will flash up some websites if you want to go to after we're done. You can go to murdermetalmayhem.com to check out some more information on what we do, the podcast, which is different than these videos, and t-shirts and some of that kind of merch. And then on my writing website, which is myname.com, petealtieri.com, you can go there and buy my books. You can read samples from the books, short stories, novels, scary, suspense, horror type stuff, but I don't do the hack and slash thing. It's mostly psychological terror, things like that. And again, the Horns High Club at 5:45 will be in a members only live today. You got a special link for that in the community tab for members only. So if you're not familiar with it, you can go to the community tab and look at it, and then you'll have the link, and you just go there, and we'll see you there after. I give you 15 minutes because I will end this at 5:30. That's the deal. I do these for 90 minutes and we're done. I don't do these 4 and 5 hour lives. I just simply cannot. I don't know how they do it, honestly. And it's not the like talking for that amount of time thing. It's just a lot of moving parts to a live. And if you're going to do it where you're staying on topic and moving through it, that's a lot of stuff to go over in 8 hours or something like that. So I don't do it that way. All right. So here's a question I came up with today. I mean, I've had this on my mind. It's not like this is a new thing. And I'm sure you guys in the group here probably thought of this too, but I thought it was worth bringing up again. When I brought it up to my wife last night or this morning, she's like, I've had the same idea, in the beginning of the case. And I remember hearing about this early, but not much about it. But I think it's really important. Would a vegan be okay using a knife in a leather sheath? That's a question. So if we've got any vegans in the house, if you want to let us know, would that bother you to use a knife with a leather sheath? Would that bother you? And then would a vegan be okay with that kind of gore from a crime scene like this? So if you're a vegan and you're watching this, I'd love to know those two things. Would you use a leather knife sheath? And could you see yourself doing a crime like this with your beliefs and something as vicious and gory as this? Because I'm not a vegan, but I couldn't imagine if that bothered me that I would see myself wanting to use a knife with a leather sheath. It just seems like that would be against your beliefs, So I'm going to look and see. Let's see. Got a few people commenting on H.H. Holmes. I see Mr. Kevin here commenting. You commented once with Pav and then another one with Pavarotti. That's cool, dude. Like, I got no issues with that guy. But I don't want to see it every 2 seconds in the chat. So if you keep doing it, I'm going to put you in timeout. Again, nothing against him. I wouldn't want somebody putting Harsh or A.R. Hayes' name in here every 5 seconds. So no matter who it is, The fact that you're putting in Pavarotti doesn't matter. It's the reason I don't understand what your purpose is. But don't do that. So Hellbear says, in my opinion, there are different reasons to be vegan. So this is something my wife may have brought this up to me. That if he was doing it for weight loss reasons, then true, that could be a thing where there's a different purpose of it. But if it's just because you're really opposed to, using animals and anything a byproduct of an animal, then I would see it would be a much different issue. I see Flee the Matrix says he wouldn't even cook with a frying pan that was cooked with meat. So he's obviously an ethical vegan. So there you go. There you go. I know that there was that job he had, filleting fish or something like that when he was a teenager, but he didn't do well with that. So maybe that's part of this, is that he didn't like, he wouldn't want to do something like that. Yeah, Coco says, I read that his old boss from a fish market said he was horrible with the knife. That's what I was just thinking. So that could have been the early signs of it, maybe, right? He did that job and it bothered him, I know I did a job one time when I was working at a slaughterhouse. It was not pleasant being there. And I'm not like a vegan or anything like that, but just the smell of the place was just really nauseating. And, it's a job. You got to do what you got to do. But there are people that, I could see being very, uncomfortable in that situation if ethically they just didn't feel right. So no judgment here about being vegan or not vegan. I'm just curious, since Brian's a vegan and I'm not, I wanted to understand it better. So that's why I'm asking. All right. We got Crime Tech Explorer says, my opinion is Brian lost weight through vegetarian and later veganism and lost weight and has since developed into a full-blown vegan, but not ethical. He's merely superstitious about animal products. So, okay. I'm learning a little bit of information here. I don't know anything about it. Okay. All right. So yeah, I thought I would pose that question to you guys. So good information about that. I thought I would throw it out there since we've got a pretty good crowd here, and I can't really see, thanks to my bad eyesight, how many people. Looks like over 200 so far, so that's good. So that's great. I would do this for 10 people. That's fine. But the more people watching is just the bigger audience and trying to obviously grow the channel. It's always interesting. We've talked about this many times in lives when people say, oh, you're just doing this for the clicks. You're just doing this for, the money and all this stuff. Well, and it'd be foolish to say the money doesn't play a role in it. I mean, who in the world would devote that much time of their life to do something like this for nothing? I mean, I don't know how many of you out there work your job for nothing, but there are people that feed their families doing this stuff. Now, I don't, but there are some people that do. So, it's part of the deal. You spend your time and people want to watch you. And then from that, your channel grows and the money grows with it. I would definitely in the situation I've been in, not working for the last year since I got, sick, it definitely, made an impact not having the YouTube side gig for several months. So it's nice that that's back again. But yeah, not working for a year, try that. Now I'm lucky I got a VA pension, but it's not a whole lot. So yeah. So that's why creators, they do. I mean, if you're a good creator, you're going to do stuff that your audience wants to see, because there's no point in doing it if your audience doesn't care or doesn't want it. So we do a lot of Idaho 4 videos because that's what you guys want to see. I mean, I've done other video topics before. They don't do nearly as well. So I'd be stupid to just keep doing the ones that don't get views, and then the channel dies, and then that's that, So that's, you play to your audience, and that's what the audience wants. So that's what you guys get. And I have fun doing it, don't get me wrong, but being paid for my time is also nice as well. But there's people that feed a family doing this, and I'm glad I'm not in that situation, but there are some that are. All right, let's see. The next one I wanted to get into here with you is Ann Taylor's deadline on this alternate theory, and who could it possibly be? I mean, I'm sure like you guys, or I know like me, I'm sure you guys are also like really, really curious. What information did they get from what tip, and who were they going to scoop up into some potential, heat? I mean, if they could provide some serious evidence to link a person or persons to this crime, then I think that's pretty significant. I would love to see the perp walk of someone else in this case other than Brian Coburn. If Brian's one of the people that did it, then he needs to be held responsible just like anybody else. So I know, there's pro burgers, that's what they call them out there, that don't think he walks on water. And I don't think that's right, because we don't know. We don't have the answers yet. We can't really say the guy's innocent if we don't know, right? Now, if he's guilty, then I think, that's a totally different story. And you can, have your judgment there on whether you think he did it or he didn't. But if he's involved with it, he needs to be held responsible. But I would love to see a perp walk of some people like we've talked about here, and pull them out of whatever life that they're living right now, and put them in a jail cell just like Brian Koberger, and see how they do. Because he's been stoic. I mean, he hasn't said a word. I mean, I haven't ever heard him even speak other than those traffic stop videos. So, I mean, he has been very quiet. He's been smart. I mean, people complain about him not saying anything. Well, when you go through something like this, I mean, he would know from his studies, and anybody that follows true crime knows this. When the cops are grilling you, and you need to say, I want a lawyer. I mean, that's just that simple. You may think you're smarter than them, and that's usually what happens with people being investigated, is they think they're smarter than everybody else. They figured it out. They got this perfect plan, and it usually falls apart because these cops know what they're doing when it comes to investigation. So, that's the problem with it, is you go in there acting all cocky because you're going to outsmart the police, and usually you wind up getting burned. And when they say, your statements can and will be used against you in court, they're not kidding. They don't say they might be used. They say they can and will be used. So it's not even an option. They're going to use it against you. So what can you possibly say that will benefit you other than, I want a lawyer? And that's the way to do it. So Brian was smart in saying, I want a lawyer. And that's the way you do it. I mean, it may not be something you want to see because you want to hear what he's got to say. And I agree, I do too. But you'd be dumb in that situation to talk to them. You'd be better off saying, I want a lawyer. And then everything goes through an attorney. And then at least you've got somebody, kind of making sure you're not answering questions in ways you shouldn't be answering questions. So it's very important about that. But I was curious, what you guys thought about the alternative theory. I know A.R. Hayes, A Convict's Thoughts, he just did a video the other day about this. And that's actually going to be the subject of our conversation on Thursday when we do our live. But in preparation for that, I thought I would throw this out in my live today with you guys. What do you think is the most reasonable alternate theory based on what we know? We realize that Ann Taylor and all these attorneys, they know a lot more than us about this case. But from what we all know, what do you think? I mean, frat boys? I mean, what's the list here? I mean, we know we've talked a lot about the frat boys. We've talked about Jack DeCore. We've talked about Jack Showalter, Enan Harsh, a drug-related hit like a cartel style on, brutality, really nasty stuff. I've been doing some research on the Mexican cartels and this Santa Muerte religion that they follow. And there's this one woman who's known in those circles that goes and cuts out the hearts of the victims. Very nasty stuff. And I'm trying to learn more about her to find out what's her deal, because that'd be a good one for the podcast to cover. Because we cover some really nasty stuff on there. But she sounds brutal, but she's part of that Santa Muerte gang, which is like worshiping like the Grim Reaper, basically. It's pretty messed up, and it's violent and nasty. So is it that? What do you guys think? So I'm going to start looking at these comments to see what you guys are saying about this here. Cole Martin, I think it says the two different scenes upstairs and downstairs leaving Dylan alive doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I mean, if it was a truly like a person walking off the street coming in there, I agree with you. But it wasn't that. There's no way it was that. I mean, I'd be shocked if it was that. If it was just some deranged individual that showed up at that house with a knife or a machete or something like that and went nuts, there's no way they're leaving anybody behind. There's no way. So that whole thing, I think, flies out. To me, I think it was something related to the occupants of that house and what they had done or were going to do. So some people have speculated that, somebody flushed some product down the toilet. I've heard that, a lot of that. And I think that it's certainly feasible, right? I mean, I'm not saying it was fact because I don't know. But if it was done, those kind of people that you'd be dealing with, they don't play nice, okay? This isn't like back in the day buying an eighth of weed off some dude down the street that, did that for a living in a trailer or something, right? You're not going to get that sort of vengeance from those sorts of deals, okay? But when you're buying like a backpack full of pills, and let's just say somebody, for whatever reason, didn't want to do it anymore or was pissed, some sort of drama going on, we don't know, and flushed a bunch of stuff down the toilet. Now, that's going to get some people wound up. real quick. And that would certainly lead to what happened. Certainly lead to what happened. Now, do I think the cartel came in and did it? No. Just like any company or corporate, you have a structure. I've talked to A.R. Hayes about this. He's got experience in being in prison and dealing with or conversing with people that did this kind of stuff. You got multiple layers. So you're not going to get the top end guys flying in from Mexico doing this kind of thing, but you could have some mid-level person with some rough individuals that do this kind of thing for them come in there and make a presence known to everybody in that area is you don't F with us, because if you do, this is what happens. Now, that would explain the absolute silence, because in a normal situation, if you had a crime like this happen, you'd have all these man on the street interviews with the neighbors talking about it, right? You don't have any of that here. Why? Because these people are scared to death. And the only way you're going to get somebody scared to death is a statement like that. You're not going to get that same reaction with the drifter coming in, just happened upon that house and did that. You're going to have something like that from a cartel-inspired, let me say, hit that could have put people in there and made this really nasty and got in and out of there. But I'm not saying they didn't have some local assistance. So there could have been people involved in this case, and that's why I use that lambs to the slaughter theory often when I do a live, because I think it's the way it happened. Is you had so many people involved in this, and I think everybody played a role. Somebody's role could have been making sure the girls got from the corner club to the grub truck and home. And that may have been his only role in what happened. He may have even been an unwilling participant of it. I don't know, but I do think that there's a lot more involvement than the guys that went in there and did what they call wet work. I think there's very likely many more people involved in this. But to everybody around there, the message was clear. You don't screw with them, because if you do, this is what happens, right? So let's see here what else you guys are saying about this. I see here somebody commenting as Tyson Farley. I doubt it's the real Tyson Farley, but I don't know. Says, don't waste your time with the girls. Like I said, maybe not. If you had some people come in here and do this, I mean, they may have just been cowering in their rooms, and that may have been what happened. It may have been what happened. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, Spaz McGee brings up a very good point. I think whoever punched Kaylee in the house until she was unrecognizable may have been a wee bit angry about something. I agree. Now, who could have been that angry with her? I mean, who knows, right? That's why Jack DeCour gets a lot of attention here. I mean, honestly, how many times have you watched a true crime documentary involving a spouse or an ex-spouse and them not being involved in it, right? I mean, it's almost always the case that they are involved. So if that's the case, then, he seems to have gotten out of this thing pretty easily with what I would consider a weak alibi. His roommate said he was sleeping. Okay. So are most people at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Most, the average person, not a college student, but average person. If somebody were to ask you, what were you doing at 3 o'clock in the morning? You'd say, I was sleeping. But I've been told that where his bedroom was in his apartment, he could get out to the roof, just out his window, walk right out onto the roof and hop down. And it was a short jump. It wasn't like a full, like, 15 or 20 foot up. It was a low roof where he could have easily jumped off. We know he was a great athlete. So doing something like that for him would be nothing. And then from there, it's a short walk to the house, like a minute. So if he was in his room and everybody thought he was sleeping, but yet he jumped out the window and was gone and then came back in the window and went back in his bed, and then, gee, there he is laying in bed at whatever time, that could be how it was done, allegedly, of course, but we don't know. We don't know. But I agree. Somebody had some sort of personal issue with Kaylee for them to do what they did to her. We've heard over and over again, poor Kaylee. We know that there was 50 something wounds. Steve G talked about, that they punched her in the nose, and, we've heard that she was unrecognizable. I was talking with Mike Adario the other night, and he brought up, the possibility that maybe, or a rumor he had heard that what I had mentioned about that woman in Mexico with the heart, that was done to Kaylee. Now that would be extremely brutal and could certainly be a reason to kind of keep things quiet about certain aspects of the case. If that's true, if something like that is true, or some the equivalent of such a thing, this is going to be one wicked trial. I mean, that the jurors are going to be put to the test to be able to stomach some of these pictures. If that's true, we don't know. But that even makes that 911 call that much more ridiculous if that's true, right? Because if that's true, then how in the world does Hunter Johnson go into that bedroom, about 10 by 12, so an average bedroom in an older house, 10 by 12. How does a person walk in a room like that to assess whether Xana's passed out or breathing or not breathing and not see all that gore? If something like that was done, we've been told she had defense wounds, her fingers were almost severed, all that. How do you not see all that and just assess whether she's breathing or not? It's unbelievable. It makes no sense. So that's my only question is, if the cartel did do, or a gang or something like that did do something like this, why didn't they react to it? Why didn't they react? Why didn't they even mention it? Not to mention the odor and all the other things that go along with it. So huge suspicion there. Huge suspicion there. Samira Dalvi says, "Hi, Pete. Nice to catch you on a live." So awesome. Thanks for watching, Samira. Silver Fox says, "It wasn't a joke when Hunter mentioned the money Ethan owed him. He couldn't even say it without looking at the floor." So, yeah, who knows? I mean, money makes people do a lot of stupid things, right? And if somebody owed somebody some money, maybe some stuff was flushed, and maybe these people had to come up with, their share. I mean, we know that Steve G was going on and on about, I paid that debt, or whatever he's talking about. Maybe that is what they were talking about. And maybe that's why Kaylee was summoned back to the house that weekend by Dylan to be her plus one, was because there was a debt owed. And the word was she was getting ready to leave for Texas. Now, of course, Texas is a lot closer to where the source of this, potentially the source of this drama, is, down in Mexico. So it's not like they couldn't reach out and touch her there in Austin. But it could have been, hey, before she leaves town, we got to make this happen. And that's why they chose, that particular weekend and made it to where she was going to be there, because she was already moved out. her stuff was there, or some of her stuff was there. And so maybe Ashlyn, who supposedly was the one that was going to take over her room when she left, Ashlyn Couch, maybe she was going to, rent the bed and stuff from Kaylee, and she was just going to leave it there and get something else in Texas. Who knows, right? Or bought it from her. Who knows? Yeah, here's a good one from Fox Rooter. Says, I have said this before, but how did the perp or perps know that anyone in the house didn't have a gun? Good point. You're in Idaho, though. You're not in an area where guns are not common. I mean, guns in a state like this, a rural community where you got people that do a lot of hunting, very possible. Personally, I think whoever did this, I think they either came in there with a gun or they made a gun like on a 3D printer just to keep everybody quiet. So I think if you had two guys, and this is what Ann Taylor is saying, it's her alternative theory involved two people. If you had one with the gun and the other one binding them up so they're not screaming too loud, and then they took care of business and left. We heard early reports that they were bound, but then there was other reports that said they weren't. But I do think that that's very possible. They could have all been moved into that living room area, and it could have been done there, right? We don't know. We have no idea. I mean, we've been told how many damn different things here. I mean, at some point you got to think they're pulling our leg, because how would you possibly have this many changes in a theory going on behind the scenes? So it seems like something's going on. But to me, it could be very possible that they put them all in the living room. I mean, think about it. If this was like a drug-related kind of hit, you'd get them all together, you'd bind them up, you'd grill them with questions, you'd start beating on one of them and making the other ones talk by watching what's going on. And then it gets out of hand, and then they find out that they were really flushed, let's say, and that they've come up with as much money as they can, but they don't have all of it. And then they go ahead and take care of business. I mean, it's very possible. It's also possible that while everybody was gone, these people weren't in the house waiting for them. And I think a good room where they would have been waiting for them is in that basement, not Bethany's apartment, but the one on the other side. If you remember from watching videos of like the cops showing up at the house when Hunter comes to the door and Bethany comes to the door, that room was lit. You could see a light on in there, but yet nobody was living in there. That was the room that Ashlyn was supposed to be renting but wasn't using. Few things with that. That's a common thing that drug dealers do, is they put their product in a room of a rental house like that, and then they lock it up. And that's where they're storing product there, but they're maybe potentially distributing product there. We all know, we've heard that rumor. So that could be. I've always wondered why Hunter Johnson is always there. Personally, I think his job was to be there. I think he was like the one keeping an eye on this house because there was product being stored there. He made sure nobody got stupid, and he was the quote unquote responsible person, making sure that everybody did what they were supposed to do. I think it's very possible. Why else is the guy constantly at the house? And, apparently he had a girlfriend. He wasn't, involved with any of these girls. So what would he be doing there all the time? I think he's meant to be there all the time because that was his job. That's my personal take on it. That's what I think. But let's just say that you had a couple of people go in the house, go in that room. What's in the reason why I focus on that room is I looked at a drawing of the property, and you know what was in that room is the circuit breaker. So when I was in the military, there's all sorts of things that you try to do to, distract the enemy, to, freeze the enemy and stuff like that. What if when they decided to do this, they were hiding in that room, somebody outside the room, like Dylan or Bethany, gave them, it could have been as simple as a text or a knock on the door or some sort of predetermined clue of, okay, everything's cool. They got out of the house. I don't think Bethany was there at all, but I think Dylan was. She leaves the house. We've heard enough about that, of video behind the house, and they caught a woman running from the house to a black truck. And we know Dylan's boyfriend had a black truck, so who knows? That could have been the deal. She leaves the house, goes in the truck, and is gone. Okay, now you got two people in the house, victims in their rooms. They kill the power. They killed the power. They put night vision on. Now, when I was in the Army, night vision was in its infancy 30 years ago, plus years ago. Nowadays, it's a lot more common. You can buy night vision on Amazon, I checked, for like 30 or 40 bucks. I mean, it's ridiculous. Now, obviously, the nicer ones, you get more money, but you just need something to make sure you can navigate through this house. And if you surprised somebody in their sleep with no power on, so there's no light that's going to come on, there's no phone, if everything's dead, you could go in there and do what you want to do and have a significant advantage over them, especially with night vision on. And with a balaclava on, you could put the night vision on, you strap it to your face. And like I said, they sell them on Amazon, so it would not like it'd be hard to get. Any home, I'm sure you could buy that stuff anywhere. And you buy it, and then you do what you do, and you make fast work of it. And then when you leave the house, you flip the breaker back on, and you go out the front door. We know the front door was wide open when everybody was wide awake at 8 o'clock or 8:30 or whatever. So that's one of the theories I've been playing with a little bit, is what if the attackers were already in the house ready? And that room would have been perfect. Nobody was in there. They could have closed the door and just waited in the silence in the dark until everybody was in place. Here, somebody says the face mask was purchased 11 months before. That's from somebody, just a girl. Here's my problem with that. I'm not going to like insult you or anything, but honestly, think about this. For anybody out there that believes that this purchase of the balaclava or ski mask or whatever they used has any significance to it, use this analogy. How many people in Idaho or Washington going into the winter purchased a pair of gloves? How many people that lived in that area purchased a scarf? How many people that lived in that area purchased a better coat for the upcoming winter? To me, the balaclava is it's so commonplace that anybody, especially a person that runs outside, if you run outside in the winter in a climate like that, you'd have to wear something like that. So that makes sense. Anybody that likes to be outside. We know Brian was all about being outdoors. He grew up in a rural part of Pennsylvania, so he probably grew up liking that kind of stuff, moved to a part of the country where that stuff was very commonplace. So yes, he would have probably bought one. How many other people bought one? So why is he being his purchase of one any more suspicious than Enan Harsh or Jack Showalter. Did Jack Showalter buy a balaclava, or does mommy buy one for him? Probably. These people lived in a very tough part of the country where winter is brutal. So I don't see that as being really relevant here. But thanks for throwing it in there. I'm not seeing it. Yeah, and then Just a Girl also said she don't believe you'd buy something 11 months before to do a crime. So I may have read your comment and thought you were saying that was like some sort of definitive evidence. So if that were the case, I apologize if I made you feel that way. So yeah, I agree. Buying one a month before, I don't think means much. If he bought one on his way over to the house, then maybe that might be something a little bit more, part of the conversation. But buying a K-bar knife for an outdoors person, a person that runs, and when you run at night, especially in a part of the country where he was, you could run into some nasty stuff. That's why he bought that bear spray. So if he was used to going out in the woods at night, you got to be prepared to be, potentially attacked by an animal. So you'd want to have a knife on you. And if you're going to be attacked by a bear, I mean, you'd want something pretty, stout that you could at least halfway defend yourself. So a knife would, potentially be the K-bar would be the perfect weapon for that. And I know I've talked to, Lucky. He's a big outdoors guy, and he's like, yeah, I mean, I've had a K-bar forever. I wasn't in the Marines. We didn't use K-bars in the Army. We used bayonets. But really, I was the last basic training cycle in the Army to do bayonet training. So it was on its way out in the Army when I was in 30-something years ago. All right, here's a good one. 25 cats and counting. Oh my gosh. 25 cats. That's crazy. I couldn't even imagine it. I couldn't even imagine it. But hey, to each his own, right? Why were the people at the grub truck watching their phones like it was a pay-per-view fight? There you go. I caught a bunch of hell for saying this a year ago. I had people going nuts, I agree. I mean, I know young people are glued to their phones, but this was beyond that. This was something like they were all watching the same thing, because if people were watching different stuff on their phones, they're not going to be reacting the same way. This was like a concerted effort to react to things like they were all watching a fight or some sort of UFC fight or something really brutal like that. And if that were the case, then that may be why what they were all watching at the grub truck. But yeah, I just did a video about the grub truck here last week, I think it was. So if you're interested in the grub truck, check it out. I know I've mentioned it before, but Huda London, Bubbly Waters, they've done some good stuff on the grub truck, as well as the Banfield. If the Banfield is something you're interested in, I did one about the Banfield as well here recently, just to kind of revisit it. Lots of stuff going on at the Banfield, really. And in my opinion, the Banfield was going on while the crimes were happening. So I think the crimes were going on while the cops were at the Banfield. I think the cops at the Banfield were there for a reason. I think they were there to make sure nothing happened. I think they were there meaning nothing happened to disturb what was going to go on. I think they were there to make sure if anything at all unforeseen, that you got cops already there. So nobody's calling 911. Cops are already on the scene. They're dealing with it. A neighbor getting kind of squirrely, they could deal with that rather than having the neighbor walking in and seeing whatever they saw. It was totally different, would have thrown it off. So I think that's what the cops were there for. I think the cops were somehow involved at least a few of them. Keep in mind, some people have balked at the cops being involved, and how is all these FBI agents and all this. You wouldn't have to have the whole police force being involved in this. You could have a couple of people being involved, because usually cartels, people in that line of work, they're going to have people paid off along the way. So it would have been very likely that at least one or two of those officers was being paid to keep things moving along, to keep the drugs going at that property, and whatever their purpose was there, that's what they were there to do. So, I think that it kind of goes hand in hand with that sort of product being sold and people being on the take. And it's not like it's unheard of. I mean, you think of all the organized crime, I've studied a lot of the mafia stuff. I mean, those guys are paying everybody off so that everybody left them alone. So it was to me, very, very possible that at least a couple of those cops weren't involved in, at least in that capacity, to just be overseers to make sure nobody stumbled and screwed up. Yeah, Spaz McGee brings up a good point. We heard here recently that they were talking in Kaylee's old room about us going back to the grub truck. Here's my take on that. What if they weren't going back to the grub truck to buy food? What was Joe Vito doing there? Putting his hands in his pockets and shaking hands with people. Him and Hayden Villa, the guy with the Charlie Brown sweater. That guy is shifty as all hell. I did a video on him last year. I'm getting ready to do another one. So if you're not familiar with Hayden Villa, keep your ears open for that one, because I did a video on him, and I learned a lot that I didn't know about that guy. And he's there at the grub truck hanging out with Joe Vito. So who knows? Maybe that's what they were going back to the grub truck for. And maybe they did go back to the grub truck and get some substances. And maybe that's what happened to all of them. I've said that in a recent video, and I caught a lot of flack for it. What if they were drugged? What if they were given something to make them go to sleep so they weren't going to wake up? And who knows? I mean, this crime could have happened later. I mean, I think everything's on the table. I don't think anybody should assume anything that we've been told is right. So, but we're nearing the end here. I want to make sure I get your questions. Let's see here. Somebody's talking about that COVID was still happening then. So you had people wearing masks and stuff, certainly. Coco said that they believe the sheath was planted. I agree. It's just too odd. It's too odd of a thing. And I know I did a video here recently, and a lot of people were surprised at the fact that they didn't send in the sheath to be examined. They sent samples, swabs from the button snap that they claim. To me, I don't know how you wouldn't know if they went and swabbed his door to his apartment and said this came from this sheath. Because I was contacted, it's been about a month ago, from a guy who had a business in that area, and he sold different things, knives and stuff. And he said that a company came out with replacement sheaths for K-bars, because apparently people that had them for a long time, the sheath would get nasty and They wanted to replace it. So they would sell just the sheath. So to me, if that and scrubbed it down really good and planted the evidence on the sheath, or that was total BS and all they did was swab a doorknob or his car door handle and bam, there's some skin cells. Gee, isn't that convenient? And nobody really knows where they came from. I mean, we haven't seen a picture of the sheath on the bed underneath Maddie's body. So how do we know? Is there body cam of that? You know, they didn't even see the sheath at first. It was on the second pass that they saw the sheath. So there's all sorts of shadiness with that. So, all right. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm trying to think of a good question here for the contest, because we're going to do this contest. If you want to be in a video with me, you got to answer this contest question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a minute or so to answer it. So anybody that wants to do this, you can comment, and I'll use a random number generator to pick the winner. And then if I pick you, I'll give you an email address to contact me, and we'll discuss it further. But for right now, and as for the day and time we do this, very flexible. I'm retired now, so I'll work around you. So if you want to do it during the day, night, whatever, we can accommodate. And we can do it recorded or live. Idaho 4, you pick the subject within the Idaho 4. Or if you want to do another case, I'd be open to another case too, because there, you know, we can only talk about Idaho 4 so much, but I know that's what you guys like. So let me think here. What's something we covered? Okay. What city in the United States did H.H. Holmes build his infamous murder castle or murder castle? The murder castle, H.H. Holmes, late 1800s in a Midwestern city. So why don't we see? I'll give you a minute to answer that here as we're closing out the live. I'll give you a minute. I'm already getting some answers, so that's good. And while we're doing that, I want to say, reminder, please don't forget to like the video. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thanks for getting me to 13,000. Now let's go to 20,000. Let's make a run this summer and get me to 20,000. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. I would love to have YouTube have to send Murder Metal Mayhem one of those play buttons. That would be so cool. That'd be so cool. All right, so we see here, we got a few. I'm going to count them up. I'm going to wait another 30 seconds or so. I'm going to count them up and then use my random number generator. Somebody said Hawaii. No, not quite. Boston, no. Okay. You got anybody else coming in here at the last second? No, H.H. Holmes, nothing to do with Sherlock Holmes. I saw somebody ask that. All right, so that's the end. And I'm going to use my random number generator and pick one. All right, the winner of the contest is Sandra S. Sandra S. Please email me at pete@murdermetalmayhem.com, and I will give you the rest of the information. What we'll probably do is set up a little video interview just to get to know each other, just how we would interact on a video. and then we could talk about what we're going to do, and then I'll come up with some notes for you to use, and it'll be easy. I won't put you on the spot. It'll be fun. I know I did this with Blogger Girl last year, and it was a big success. So I thought it would be fun to do it again. So Sandra S, congrats on winning the contest, and you can go ahead and it's cool seeing you guys saying congrats to Sandra. So you guys aren't being bad sports about it. I'll do more of these if you like doing this kind of stuff. I like getting the group involved, and this was I thought a really good live for that. I'm glad I realized that I could see the comments so much better on my phone, because now I feel more like I'm in a live as compared to just talking and you guys are talking and I can't see what you're saying. So I appreciate it very much, guys. We're going to call this one done. We'll do it every weekend, either Saturday or Sunday. It just depends what I got going on that weekend. But you'll know about it ahead of time. And if you're a member of the Horns High Club, thank you for your membership. And I will see you in a few minutes, 5:45 Central, in the members only live. And we'll do that. And I'll see you guys soon. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support more than you know.